Hi guys, good evening. How are you guys doing? All right, guys. Actually, still no questions. We're not going to take too long today. How is it going? How are things? Are there some questions you guys have for me that we can do? I was planning that we start our series today to make the blog post, but we cannot start today. Hopefully, we are going to start that on Saturday. Okay, if there are some questions, feel free to ask them so that we can just do them briefly and see how we can end. And then I'll try to attend to you guys on Slack, hopefully. So at the moment, I'm actually expecting your questions. I think I have one new question here, which I'm just going to check that out. If it's something. Okay, week 4 assignment. All right, so let me try to access the LMS right now. Uh, just an alert. My network might really be. So, guys, again, welcome all. And so, if you have a question, do well to post it while I try to access the LMS and see the task. If it's possible to explain, then I can do that at the moment. So, let me see, week four, week four. All right. Okay, so week 4 is the user authentication. And let me see. All right, so I think we've been working on this, right? So let me see, storage is still the CSV. Now we've done this already, right? Do you really want me to go through this again? So week 4 task, basically this is a structure of week 4 task. Inside assets, you have the CSS. Inside forms, you have the login, the register, and the reset password. Then inside PHP, you have a list of files that have no logic in it, and you've been requested to write the logic in each of the file. Actually, um, let me try to download this right now and see if I can open it on VS Code. So while I'm trying to do that, I am waiting for uh, your replies if you have any, if you have questions, or rather. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them while I try to open this. Okay. So let me open VS Code and try to access the extracted folder. I don't know. Let me see. I think I should first of all move stuffs. Uh, just screen, just mm, Control X and go to htdocs. Uh, Learning dashboard, learning user up. Okay, so Control V, and I can close this, and then let me try to access it here. OPT, um, lamp, then htdocs, and then user off, turning user off. Okay. So basically, I think this is the project right now. Please just indicate if you can see my screen still. So guys, I'm still waiting. If you have questions, feel free to ask them while I try to Okay, so I'm going to start XAMPP and show you how this is functioning right now, because basically there is no logic, I think. Okay, there is no logic. So let me just open this on the browser. Uh, increase the size, right? Sudo, uh, this is to start XAMPP, and okay, XAMPP is starting. So I should be able to access my browser now, and localhost / learning uh, / user of, right. If I access this, all right, this is basically how it should look. This is the landing page of the application, and I click on login. I have this login screen. You are meant to handle what happens when I click on this. All right. So basically, no logic is done. So you just see this handle this page. If I go to reset password and I click on reset, you have something handle this page. And when I go to login screen, go to register. I have something similar. When I click on this, register. Okay, let me just pass in something. Uh, Email, password, something like that. And I click on register. You also see handle this page. So that's basically the skeleton of week 4 task, right? So what you are asked to do, each of these files have, I think, a function that has been defined but not implemented. For example, the login, you're supposed to write the login script here, right? Yeah, you write it in here. The reset, you write the reset script here. In fact, if you even have comments there that will help you. For example, logout says check if the existing user has a session. If it does, destroy the session and redirect the user to the login page. Register says, okay, save the data to the CSV file and echo okay. So you already have a description, and then the storage has a users.csv with nothing inside. What you are expected to do is just inside this PHP, just do the work in here, right? That is a week 4 task. For somebody who actually did ask that, I sure week 4 has not even expired or is expiring tomorrow. Let me check that. Week 4 task expires tomorrow. All right, I see. And that is about, am I seeing 10 marks or I'm not seeing well? Okay, it's part of week 4. No, that one has expired already, loops and functions. So the person who asked this, I don't know if I'm replying this late, but I don't think I'm replying this late. Um, okay. All right, so there are no questions again. Guys, I'm waiting for you guys to actually uh, ask your questions. Are there questions? And like I was saying, what we are going to do is that from the next class, that is when we are going to start our blog section to create a blog with basic PHP, HTML, CSS, PHP, Bootstrap. Yeah, just that. So, what do you guys say? Are there questions? Oh, that I promised to take OOP today. Oh, really? Jeez. Okay. Let me try to access something. Um, let's see this. Sorry, PHP. Um, so I think I'll just try to introduce the OOP today, and then we can continue from next because I even forgot that I told you guys that I was to introduce OOP today. Okay, so let me try to check the resource. Object-oriented programming, PHP. Let me open the Google presentation and see here. All right, guys. So what I will do right now, I'll try to go through these slides, but I'll not go through the details as well because yeah, you must have gone through the tutorials already. So object, let's talk about our first experience as programmers. Literally, you've been writing a series of commands like scripts, echo hello world, do stuffs, and then you went to a level where you wrote functions, right? And the functions were kind of like, wow, this is cool because you bundle some code into a particular function that, so you see that function, for example, login function is meant to perform a particular task, and then log out to perform a particular task, and so on. That is still called procedural programming because you are just writing bunch of code. Even though functions go a long way to doing some stuff for you because you can actually call a function somewhere and it will do stuff for you. But let's talk in the context of procedural programming. You find out that most of the cases you end up repeating yourself again and again and again. So for example, you want to do a while loop that will print some stuff 10 times. You write it here, you go to another file, you still have to write that while loop, you go to another file. So repeating yourself is what we want to not do, right? We don't want to keep on repeating ourselves. So procedural programming is about writing procedures or functions that perform operations on data. Now, object-oriented programming is about creating objects. Now, you will hear about objects if you actually went through the resources or the videos for data types, you heard about objects. But now, in this case, in object-oriented programming, um, we have some several advantages that it really have over procedural programming. Now, one of the advantages is that it's easier, right, and faster, because you write one class and you can import that class and create. You don't need to write the class again. You just need to create an object of that class and do work. Now, it provides a clear structure for your program because, for example, you have the user class, and that user class has login, logout, register, and so on. So you see some bundling of your code in object-oriented programming, and that is some kind of structuring that it provides. Another one is that okay, it helps you not to repeat yourself. Like I said at the beginning, most of the times when you write functions and procedures, you end up calling them in several places, or you end up rewriting them in several places. But OOP, you just have one class, and when you want to use something in that class, you just need to create an instance of the class that is called an object. Now, object-oriented programming also makes it possible to create full reusable application with less code and shorter development time. Now, this might sound like theory, but when you get into it, you find out that you write an application, and the next time you want to do something else, you can actually you reuse that application, just change some basic things. You don't need to rewrite stuff from scratch. So you create a certain, should we call it skeleton, that you can always use. Now, don't repeat yourself principle is about reducing the repetition of your code. And that is something you want to actually um, implement, right? So it turns out I'm really explaining this thing too much, but I think this is all about object-oriented programming. You hear of classes, you hear of objects, you hear of properties and methods, you hear of constructors and destructors, you hear of inheritance and interfaces. Now, I'm not going to explain this one after the other. What we are going to do is that I'll just open my editor right now and try to do something related to that. Okay, so let me create a new folder here called classes. And inside here, with object-oriented programming, you deal with what? Classes, you deal with objects. Now, what is a class? A class provides a general structure for your code. Okay, so for example, let's assume something like a user class. When we have a user class, we know that now let me give something more common. Let's talk about an animal class, for example. When you write an animal class, any animal could fall under that class, right? For example, human is an animal, a cat is an animal, a dog is an animal, but guess what? They will all fall under the animal class, right? So a class provides a basic structure for your code. Now, let us try to create a class here. How do you create a class? Let me just give it user.php, and what we want to do is we'll create a user class, PHP. This is how you create a class. You use a class keyword followed by the class name, right? So let's say animal, and yeah, you have something like that. This is the syntax for a class, right? This is like a structure. To some extent, when we start talking about properties and methods, constructors, you all understand the whole aspect of structure. So this is how you instantiate a class in PHP. Okay. Um, Now, the next thing is about you being able to create objects of a class. But you can't create objects of a class when the class really does nothing. So let's talk about what a class does and what a class has. Okay, so a class can have properties. Let's talk about animal. An animal can have a name, right? It can have the category in which it falls in. It can as well have what again, age, how long it has stayed, and it can also have some things that it does, right? So what does an animal do? For example, an animal like a dog will bark, it will walk, it will eat, and so on. So those two things that I just talked about are classified into two, and those two things as well are very important in object-oriented programming. So a class has properties and methods. Properties refer to the attributes that a class have. For example, let's talk about animal, and let's talk about the name. Name. So I'm going to use something here, but for now, just don't look at it. So you have name, you have something like age, right? Age. Now, let's also talk about what a class can do, or what an animal can do. An animal can eat, and they call those things uh, methods. And methods are like functions, but the only difference is that a method is called within a class. Functions are the normal things you define without a class, like out of a class. So how do you define a method? You can use the function keyword, right? Like I said, a function is a method. So function eat, and we say echo eating, right? Let's talk about another function, say work, function work, and echo I am working, right? And this you can use to explain the whole structure of a class. So you see that the class now it provides a structure for your given object. Okay, so a class as well has properties, which are the attributes, and methods, which are the functions that the class perform. The next thing we'll talk about is object. An object is an instance of a class. So at a particular time, and that animal could be a cat. Another time, the animal could be what a dog. Another time, it could be a human. So each time we get an instance of this class, we call it an object. And how do you define an object? We have our class here, and to get an object, you could just say cat is equal to new animal, right? And this is how you are able to create an object. So what is the use of this? So we could say, let's talk about cat.eat, right? And try to print this out to the terminal. So you see, clear, PHP. Okay, let me enter inside the folder, classes. And inside classes, I have user. So PHP user.php. And let me see, you see eating, right? Which is some kind of a method that an animal does. Now you see this arrow function or arrow keyword that we use here. This is how you access the properties and methods of a given class. So for example, if I said name is equal to uh, cat again, I could as well print out cat name, right? And uh, what's up? Okay, so I have cat the name, and if I run this, let me break this. Echo, and let's run this. Oh, so echo break goes on the browser, not on terminal. So we have this, right? So you see it and cat. That is how you are going to define a class. A general skeleton for defining objects. And an object now could be an instance of that class at a particular time. Now, a class has, like I said, properties and methods, right? Now let's talk about the default access modifiers for a class. For example, if we want to set the name of a class, right? So let's define this. I'll not give this one a name, and I can say, okay, uh, function uh, function get or set name, right? Uh, I pass in name, return. Oh, this is set name, so it doesn't return. So this name is equal to, I think, name. Yeah, so this is how you set the name, and get name function, get name, return this dot name. And basically this is, let me just get rid of these ones at the moment, assuming that we are not using them. So these are as well uh, access. These are they call this how they call this, I've forgotten it, but in this case these are also methods. All right, so we use this to set the name and get the name. So let's try it out. So in this case, if I say set name and I say the name is cat, right, and I try to uh, return or echo cat get name, right? Let's see what this one print out, and let's explain what it is. So you see a print out cat. Awesome, right? So now let's explain what is going on in the background. We have this class. Let me delete this because I want to show the full screen. So we have this class and these properties. At the moment, they don't have any initial value, right? And what we do is that we can create these two methods. How they call this? I think access modifiers. Forgotten terminologies right now. So yeah, let's just call them getters and setters. I'll think about the other name. So we have this one, which is a setter, right? So I can call this setter and uh, getters, right? So yeah, I think they are called access modifiers. And you see that we can use this set name to set the name of our object. So this keyword refers to what? This object that we are creating. So I am going to also do the same thing again, create another object. Dog is equal to new animal, and I can as well just say dog dot set name, and I say they call that Tom, and let's echo out dog dot get name, right? Let's see what happens here. So I'll try to let me give this new line as well. So give this a new line uh, and reprint this. Please take note of what happens on the terminal as well. You see, we have cat and Tom. Now, how awesome is this? We have just one class, but we're able to instantiate two objects, a cat and a dog. And we're able to set the name of that dog and set the name of that cat, and we are still able to print it out. So you see, this is how awesome object-oriented programming is. And I've talked about four main things. I have the class being the skeleton, right, or a blueprint for which an object can be created. Then we talked about an object as an instance of a class, which implies what? An object could be that class at that particular time. So we can create as many objects as possible, right? And yeah, it won't, there's no limit to creating it. Now we can also check if it is an instance of a class, like is, I think instance, is that, let me see. I think I'll come back to that. So this is how you create a class, how you create an object, and so on. But to some extent, there are some times that you want to create a class and pass in some initial values for that class, right? And for you to be able to do that, you use what they call constructor. And that constructor, it is what you will use to set initial values. So how do you define a constructor? Now, use the function construct keyword, right? This underscore underscore construct, and you can pass in the name and say the age, right? And what you need to do is like this name is equal to name, this age is equal to age, right? Now you notice that immediately I did this constructor here, we started having an error down here. Look at what we have here. So you see, when I hover over that class, you see you expected two arguments, found zero. So in this case, once you have a constructor for a class, you need to always pass in the values. So for this case now, if I pass in and say the cat is called Jerry and the age is 2 years, right? And I can also say the dog is Tom and the age is 5 years, for example, right? This error goes away. Now, let us try to print this. So let's try to print dog dot name, right? Let's say echo dog dot name and echo cat dot name. Let me just concatenate this with a new line as well. Uh, New line and new line here too. And okay, so we have this now. And if we print this out again, show you my terminal. You see Tom and Jerry, right? Because you see, these are some awesome things that you do with classes. So you could initialize a class with some values, and this constructor can take as many arguments as possible. So you could pass in the name, the age, and so on. And when you are creating an instance of your class, you need to pass in the initial values. Now let's check something. After printing out the doc name, let me set the doc name again. So doc.set name to now new name, let's say Thomas. Sorry if I'm using somebody's name. And let me echo out, echo, or let me just say doc.getName. Echo doc.getName, right? And you are going to see something wonderful again here. Let me just echo out. Let me break this. And yeah, so this class so that you see the distinction. Now let me, and you see Tom and Thomas. Use of this constructor, we set the initial these access modifiers, right? A setter is used to modify the original name of a given object. Maybe if an object had a given name or a given property, a setter is used to modify that property, and a getter is used to access the properties. Now, you guys have to take note of this because these are some of the questions that they usually ask when they start talking about object-oriented programming. They ask you what access modifiers are. You need to know that they are also called getters and setters, and getters are used to access some properties, and setters are used to modify those properties. Okay, so that is how you would define a class. That is how you are going to as well use properties and methods in a class. Like I said, this is a property and this is a method. A method is a function that the class performs. A property is what that class has. Okay. Yeah. So this is some basics that you should think about. Let me see. So now you also have this destruct, which is also used in object-oriented programming. For example, if I try to use destruct here, I think function underscore destruct, and there's something else. Let me see. Let me check destructors or destructors, destruct. Okay, so literally, I think the destruct doesn't really need to be implemented. Once I use this destruct is used to clear the original properties and methods that were already set for a particular object. That is just what the destruct does, right? And construct is used to set the initial properties for a given class. Okay, so that is it for object-oriented programming. There are some aspects called access modifiers, which I just talked about. And are they access modifiers? Oh, okay. Hope I'm not mixing things up. Let me see these getters and setters. And setters called in OOP. Let me be sure about this. Um, is that the name? Like, will it stick to the fact that they are called getters and setters? Oof, another name for getters and setters. Let's see, we have that. Yeah, yeah. All right. I think I got it. So I was calling it access modifiers, but no, they are not called access modifier. These are called accessors, accessors, and mutators. Okay, that is the name that you should use. Now, access modifiers has to do with controlling the visibility of your class. Now, there are some cases that you don't want every aspect of your class to be visible, right? You don't want it to be accessed out of that class. For example, if I want this name, most of the times you set it to private, uh, private, and even the function, you could set it to public. So by default is public. Now let's talk about access modifiers in PHP, what they are all about. Let me just go to that. Mm, Let me see, access modifiers. So what are access modifiers? You see that properties and method have access modifiers which control where they can be accessed. So access modifiers generally just control where properties and method of a particular class can be accessed. Should it be accessed within the class only? Should it be accessed out of the class? Should it be accessed out of the file containing the class? All of those things are called access modifiers. And in PHP, you have three main access modifiers. you have the public, and this public states what? The properties of method can be accessed from everywhere, like everywhere within your class. You can access it. You have protected, which says that the properties or the method can be accessed within the class and by the class derived from that class. Now, when I talk about class derived from that class, we talk about inheritance, which we are going to do. I don't think we'll do that today. And then private talks about the properties or methods can only be accessed within that class. Now let's come to this and see something. I'm just going to copy this code, come here and paste it out. So the cool thing with PHP is that you can write so many classes in one file and it's not going to affect you. Even though it's not always advisable to write many classes in one file, it is supposed to be in a way that each file is a class on its own, because most of the time a class has a lot of methods and properties that it has or that it performs. So let's talk about access modifiers, right? Now I'll just have to comment all of these guys up here and then come to this class. We created a class called person, and we have the name, we have the age, we have the height. But notice what is there. We said the name is public, the age is protected, and the height is private. Now let's try to bring this out, and you are going to see what the problem will be. So you see the first thing, on code error cannot access protected property person in line 56. So this is a case for protected. So we cannot get the age, right? So if I comment this, and also let's talk about the height, you also get an error, cannot access private person property. And if I comment this, let's see about the age. You see, let's set default value, name equal blessing. Let us echo person.name. Person name, right? So this is called person one, not person. Okay. So if we run this now, you find out that it print out blessing, but we could not access the age and the height. Why? Because at our definition, we set it to protected and private. Now, how can we access this? We can only access this private and protected by maybe using things called getters and setters. Let me show you that. Uh, did I actually do that? Okay, so OP inheritance private. Okay, so let me just show you what I mean. So if you want to access this private, you also need to define a method here, function called say get age. And if we try to return this age, let's see what we are going to have here. So I'm going to uncomment this, and I will set the age to 25, and I'll echo person one age, right? Now let's see if this is going to cause a problem. On code access protected property, let me see what is the problem. Oh, this is protected, not private. So let me set this to private at the moment. And what is the problem? Let me see, get age. Oh, sorry, yeah. So we have to pass get age here instead. So let me see, access private age again. Get age this dot age. Okay, let me check that out. I think I'll come back to this. I wasn't really prepared for this class. Let me see. So we have public. Let's talk about private here. Set name and get set age, get age. Okay, so basically we have to as well set it, right? So you cannot directly set the age and the name directly. So you also have to define the setter, set age, and let's talk about age and say this age equal to age, and hopefully we should be able. Let's set the age. So we cannot do this directly. We have to say set age, then we pass in the age 25, right? This one goes out and semicolon here. So you see we're able to get it. So once you define these properties as protected or private, you need to define the accessors and mutators because they are necessary for you to access it. But in case of public, you can explicitly set it with the equal to, just like the name is equal to blessing. Okay, so this is what access modifiers are in PHP and what accessors and mutators are in PHP. And this is how object-oriented programming is. So for example, if you notice, I tried to redefine something here, PHP. So in our class, in our assignment, one of our assignment, we had something called class user auth, right? And this user auth had something like, I can't even remember, say private, a name, uh, let me just copy this, and let's say age is supposed to be a semicolon. Um, this, we call it, let's say, yeah, name and age, for example. I don't want to add. And then we had now a constructor, oh, sorry, function underscore construct, and we could set in the name and the age, and then we do this, the name is equal to name, this age is equal to age. Something you should also notice, this age here is not equal to this age here. So I could say person age, right? Person's age and person's uh, person's name and person's age, and that is what you are going to pass in here. Person's name and person's age. You are supposed to take note of this. What you define here, right, is not what you get here. So this one, let's see. Yeah, this is basically how you should get this. Let me just try something. Um, let's see, how do you call this? Let me just create an object. A user is equal to new user auth, and then person name, and 25. So I just want to check something to make sure that I'm on track. Echo user the name. Let's see what this should give us. Uh, okay, so that is something private. Oh, I'm going to set this to public at the moment because I don't want to set the accessors and mutators. Okay, so we get it actually. So you should note that what this person name and this name here are different. The constructor only set this as should I call them arguments that you are going to link to this. So whatever you pass inside this class it takes this and assigns it to this name. It takes this age and assigns it to this age. That is how accessors and mutators work. Okay, so I wanted to talk about that. So this is one of the methods, the constructor. Then you could be like function login, right? And that login could take username and password. And you define logic here, like uh, echo login, assuming that that's how login was defined. And then you could as well define function to register, and you get the username, the password, and a host of other properties. Now, let me just get rid of that. You could also define your logic here, echo register, so that when you define an object of this user of now, for example, let's say I have another file called router route.php, and this is php. So I could say what should I say? Okay, so case, oh, do they call switch uh, to, right? This one is just not switch through. Let's say how do you switch again? Request, and we can be like, okay, if we set if we set post login. So if it was a login request from the front end, let me see, set post login, then we call the, oh, am I talking here? Syntax error if set login. Oh, okay. Sorry, not if, case set, how I should put it, post login, right? And basically what should this case do? Oh, and we define our logic here, right? So we could be like user of dot login, sorry, user of dot login. So basically, you need to define an object of this class. So I could just put it like this. But now maybe we can import the user auth here. So include once. That's how you used to import. I could say what's the name of the class? User.php. And now we can create a new object. So user is equal to new user auth, right? And I pass in the name, say Andrew, and the age 25. Okay, so we come here and function login, so we can pass in what? See this and close this. So let me just close the switch at the moment. We'll come back to that. So I can pass in the username and password, for example. So let me just pass in a certain string, name and pass, right? And that's basically it. Like, that is how you're going to be able to actually use object-oriented programming. So we have this route file, and this route file just has some function that this function initializes a new class, a new object of our user auth class, so that we can determine the kind of request that is passed by the user, and through that we are able to actually do the required logic. Okay, guys. So that is what we can. That's where we can end for today. That was a lot of talk. So you guys could maybe take time. You can take time to actually go through this again once more, and then post your questions maybe in the Slack channel, or please try to use this form. Like, where is the form even? Let me try to access the form and send it here. Use this form to send your questions. Like, yeah, that is how I'm going to be able to know what to actually explain and what not to explain. Because me explaining everything right now could just be boring for some people. So I'm sending the link to the group. Yeah, I just sent it here right now. So, guys, that was a lot of talking, right? Now, you guys should just say something so that we can end. It's already 8 p.m. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, uh, I think we can end here, right? Let's end the class here. Feel free to drop your questions. I'll actually try to break these things down again. Like, yeah, I'll try to break it down again. But I'll just give you guys an overview of what OOP is all about, how it is useful. Because you notice that in this, you don't get to write, for example, look at this. You have one, two, three, four files. But notice that in our user, we could just have this user class and have another function called logout, and define some logic, and have another function called what again? I think register logout, then reset, whatever the spelling is. And that is how it's going to keep on going. Now, how do you group? How do you know how to group this? You need to know that, okay, you group particular things that are essential for one particular part of your application. For example, you have an authentication part. So you create an authentication class. You have, what again? Let's say you were creating a to-do list, so you can create a to-do class that will handle create to-do, delete to-do, update to-do, and then you have, that is how it is going to work. Like, that is how it works. Okay, so guys, I think we should call it off here, right? So I'm going to see how we can actually do this step by step. So okay, Manuel, I'll try to respond to the Slack. Let me try if it is here. Hopefully, another mentor is not going to kick me out right now. Let me see. Um, Slack. So if it is about the private DB that was set, I noticed that in our user auth, we had a private property called DB. For example, it was called private static uh, DB. What you should do is just get rid of this static keyword. Okay, that's how you should do that. But I'm going to your DM right now. Um, yeah, I'm going to your DM. And Samuel, about the blog, I wanted to start it today, but no, I'll not start it today. Let's start it on Saturday so that we can do it Saturday, Sunday morning, or Sunday, Monday, and yeah, continue on Wednesday. All right. Okay, guys. I think we should end here, right? You guys should have a nice evening. Is that how they say it? Have a nice evening. Oh my God, Samuel. Truly, yeah, maybe I'll try to set priority. I forgot that we were supposed to do that SQLite. So, all right, please remind me. Please, you could put this in the questions, right? Put this in the question form. That's going to help me actually be able to know what to do. And the reason I'm doing this is because I don't even have questions on the question form. So I just try to, okay, let's make the class busy, those kind of things.